Archaeology is the study of past cultures.
About what I like, the pyramid. I draw the pyramid.
Like Miss Nandini just said, a dig site is the special area. It's kind of like a lab in the wild, because that's what they're trying to do. They're going to go gather this information, gather their data, make their observations, and come to some conclusions. Part of what we're going to find there is the leftover bits of whatever humans did, right? Like Miss Nandini said, that could be cloth, that could be jewelry, that could be bones, that could be parts of their bodies, that could be tools that they use. It's the leftover bits. So it's kind of like digging through someone's trash. We can learn a lot from trash. So for the next couple slides, I'm going to show you some trash, and you have to help me figure out whose trash it might be.
Maybe it could be SpongeBob?
So we looked at the tools that were left behind. There was a spatula, there was a broken net. So that tells us what that person did, right? They must cook. We know that this is a jellyfishing net, so they must go jellyfishing. And then we found a box of snail food, right, in the trash. And so that, Sandy said, that means that the person probably has a pet snail. So this tells us it's SpongeBob.
Bootsy Boots?
Yes, it's Puss in Boots. You got that one fast, right? But yeah, what else could we learn about this? We see milk, so this tells us what they ate, what they drank, right? We might find glasses, or we can even do special science sometimes on like ancient pots and figure out what was inside of it, which is pretty cool. We might see something like a broken sword, right? Broken tools that people have used. We might see pieces of clothing like the boots. And so we can put those together and we know that that means Puss in Boots. If you have some things at home, all you need are popsicle sticks like this, and then crayons or markers. So everyone lay your popsicle sticks flat, just like I have them. So choose one of the sticks, and you're gonna pull it off, just like that, and you're gonna put it somewhere else. Once you've removed that popsicle stick, now what we're gonna do is we're gonna remove all the rest of them. And we're gonna put them in a pile. Not with the one that we just took off. We're gonna leave the one we just took off outside. And it's okay if it's hard. It's meant to be a little difficult because it's really hard to be an archaeologist when things break and fall apart and degrade with time. I'm still missing one popsicle stick. But do you see that you can kind of still see the W and the K that I made, even though I'm missing a whole popsicle stick? So even though we're missing pieces, even though it's really hard to put back together with missing pieces, we can often still figure out what it was trying to say or what the art was that was drawn. So first, we have Miss Madison Aubey, and she's a second-year PhD student studying archaeology in the anthropology department at UCLA. And then we also have Miss Nicole. Miss Nicole Smith is a second-year PhD student, also in the Department of Anthropology at UCLA.
So my name is Miss Maddie, and I'm going to start first, and I'm going to talk about sort of how I got into archaeology, where I went to school, and then some of the different places that I visited with archaeology, yeah? And so I grew up in New York City, which is on the exact opposite side of the country, but I also grew up in a city like you guys, and I grew up in a neighborhood called Harlem. And Harlem is really well known for the Harlem Renaissance, which happened about 100 years ago. And it was this moment where all these artists and poets and musicians, like if anyone's heard of jazz music, that's sort of when it became really popular and people were really, we have lots of hands raised, and people started getting really into like sort of the art scene. And so when I was growing up, that was always something that I was thinking about, like when I was your age. So when I was deciding where I wanted to go to college, I thought that I wanted to study art history because I wanted to learn the history of all these different things that I had grown up hearing about that happened in the neighborhood that I was from. So I went to college at Columbia University, which there's a picture of what it looks like. And then when I got there, I realized that I didn't really like being inside all the time. I'm somebody who likes going outside way more often. And I was like, I really like that in high school, I get to have my summers off and I get to be outside. So I decided to study archaeology because archaeologists, one, usually our summers, we get to go on like these big trips to different places all over the world and find things in the ground and put things together similar to what you guys were learning about before. But also it just meant that I could be outside and I wasn't just gonna be in museums every day. The first field school that I went to, and field school is what we call it when we go and we learn how to do archaeology outside. So the first field school that I went to was in Greece, and it was in a part of Greece called Kalamata. And the next thing that I studied was animal bones. So archaeologists can find artifacts, which are like the pots and stuff that we were just looking at, but you can also find animal bones, and you can study the animal bones to sort of see like what kind of animals were here, what kind of animals were they eating, did they have pets, different things like that. So now we're gonna play a little bit of a game where I'm gonna show you this bone, and I'm gonna show you a small piece, like something that I found, which is here, and then I'm gonna show you what that came from, which is here. Does anybody know what kind of animal this is? What kind of skeleton is this?
A fish.
It is a fish. Do you know what animal that is?
Giovanna, what animal is it?
It is a cow. So my research is in Mobile, Alabama, which is the southeast side of the country. So pretty far away from here. And I study a town, which we mentioned earlier, called Africa Town. And it was founded by the last people who were ever brought over as slaves from West Africa. And once they were free, they established a town because they had been in Africa 5 years before, and they felt really different from the Americans around them. So they wanted to create a space where they could, have their African identity and enjoy the things that they had done when they were back in West Africa. So some of the artifacts that I find is you can find lots of glass bottles, like what's in the middle. And those would have things like food or drinks, but they also could have things like medicine or perfume for the small ones. And that's actually where the people who made that town in Alabama came from. And so when I'm in West Africa, I'm digging and excavating in pits like this, which is called a unit. And we're looking for different artifacts to see if they could compare and look the same as the things that people in Alabama were making.
So I'm from Michigan, which is highlighted in red here. And I went to college at the University of Michigan. And so a fun thing about Michigan is that it's shaped like a mitten. And so when people ask, oh, where are you from? Where are you from in Michigan? We can put up our hand because it's the same shape as the state and point to where exactly we are. So on my hand, I am all the way over here on the west side. So that's, if you can see my cursor right here, very close to Chicago. Chicago's over here. And so I stayed in my home state for college, and I technically went in to college thinking I would be a doctor. And actually I still am becoming a doctor, but I thought I was going to be a medical doctor. And then I took an anthropology class that also had some archaeology in it at the time, the professor who was teaching it, he's actually the professor who I work with now at UCLA. And so in this project that I'm about to share with you, a lot of the stuff we look at could be considered trash. And so what can we learn from trash? How do you think trash relates to archaeology?
Maybe you could see what it is and see maybe it could be useful to learn from it.
Yeah, exactly. We can learn a lot from the things that people throw away. And actually, when you think about it, most of archaeology is looking at the things that people are throwing away. And so the really cool thing about archaeology is that we can use those sorts of ideas and those ways of thinking to study the people who are living today. So a lot of times when we think about archaeology, we think about dinosaurs and Indiana Jones. Actually, I don't know if you guys know Indiana Jones, but really old things from thousands and thousands of years ago. But we can also look at things just from yesterday as pieces of archaeological study. And so this project that I was working on, the Undocumented Migration Project, we look at the things that people leave behind as they're making their journey from Central America, South America, and Mexico up to the United States. And so as people are making this journey, it's very long. It takes sometimes weeks, sometimes months, sometimes years, depending on their different circumstances. And so they leave a lot of things behind along the way during that time. And so the place that we were working in is this place called Arivaca, Arizona. And so it's this tiny town. You see this red dot here on the right. That's just 5 miles north of the border between the United States and Mexico. And in that location, there are a lot of people who who are coming through the border, and as they make that journey, they're leaving all of these different things behind. And so we come across, water bottles, shoes, clothes, backpacks, all sorts of things that people are, using along the way, that they're leaving after they no longer need it. And so we look at these things as archaeological artifacts. And so even though they're the things that people are using today and these people are still living, we can still study these as things to sort of ask questions like, what are the necessities that people need to bring? How are things like water bottles, how do people modify them to be easier to carry? So there are lots of different questions we can ask by looking at these modern day things.